So I would gather from most of you being from the Fearless community that some of you may already be acquainted with Jacquie, who is our host for today. Jacquie has very kindly agreed to give a talk on this topic because I think it's certainly something that a lot of people would like to do. They don't really know if it is achievable. They don't really know how to go about it. And I think certainly post-pandemic, a lot more remote options have been opened up. So actually, perhaps barring travel restrictions because of COVID, this could actually help in the long run in terms of being able to pursue this digital nomad life. So I will hand over to Jacquie to give us a better introduction into herself, who's currently in Costa Rica. And I'm sat here in Essex and it is absolutely teeming down today. It's so grey and wet. It couldn't be a worse day. So I'm very grateful that Jacquie has got a blurred background of her apartment and we can't see like palm trees and stuff in the background because I would not be happy with that today. But over to you, Jacquie.
Thanks so much, Laura. I'm actually in Colombia now and it's extremely gray today, if that makes you feel any better.
Okay, slightly better.
But it's warm, so I don't know, it's not so bad. So first of all, just want to thank everybody so much for coming. I'm just gonna jump right into the presentation. Okay, can we all see Figma?
Looking good, looking good.
Okay, great. So yeah, this is just going to be a presentation on traveling and working. And I just want to sort of share with everybody things I've learned from just over a year of full-time nomading now. So I thought I would kick off with my story specifically, because it's a bit of a weird one. So traveling has been a big part of my life forever. I was extremely fortunate to have parents growing up that took us around the world. And I think that is sort of really the beginning of what sparked for me this idea of like, I just want to be everywhere and see everything. I have definitely never really been much of a homebody, very much always wanting to go out and do things. So to me, this is sort of where it all begins. It's just this early introduction in childhood. And then I'm going to fast forward a lot of years. To preface, before this experience, I'm originally from Vancouver and I ended up going to university at the University of Melbourne. So I saw that somebody here was from Melbourne. I lived there for 3.5 years and I had just an amazing experience in Australia. And I was really not ready to return to Canada. So unfortunately, my visa was expiring to stay in Oz. And I had done a tour in the Whitsundays, which is like this really beautiful beach area in sort of Queensland in Australia, with a company called Kentucky, and they run tours for 18 to 35-year-olds. So kind of like youth travel. And I was frantically trying to find some kind of a job where I wouldn't have to go back to Vancouver. And I saw that Kentucky was hiring in Asia. And the long story, very short, is that 15 days after I applied for this job, I was in Bangkok. And this began a sort of 2-year experience working as a tour guide in Asia. So kind of going from the top here, the first picture on the top left was in Vietnam. I was running a tour where all the clients were like famous YouTubers, which is a really interesting experience. Below that is a picture of khao soi, which is my favorite food in Thailand. It's like a spicy noodle soup from northern Thailand. The picture of me in the corn dog suit is in Japan. So in my second year working for Kentucky as a tour guide, I was fortunate enough to get to run tours all across Japan. And then the final photo is from Songkran in Thailand, which is Thai New Year. It's basically like it's like splashing water on somebody is considered good luck, but it just becomes like a full-blown water fight. And definitely was one of my absolute favorite experiences from moving on the road. But this job was definitely very challenging. I was really young when I did this job. I was between the ages of 21 and 23. And moving locations every 2 to 3 days is even hard for young people. And I kind of got to the point where I thought, okay, well, I got this degree in media communications. I should probably try to do something with it rather than just living on the road forever. So I left Asia in the end of 2015, and I sort of made myself a promise that I'd find a way to travel and work again. And I think this is really key in my story. I literally wrote myself a letter. It's somewhere at my mom's house in Vancouver. But I just wanted to make sure that I could find some kind of a career where I could live on the road again, but not be beholden to working for a giant corporation where I sort of had this job where I really had no control over my own life. So fast forward to Canada. This is in 2016. And I moved back in with my mom in like the basement. So it was sort of like a very rude awakening of I'd been living abroad for 5 years, and then I came back to Canada, and it was like, okay, and now I live at home again and nobody will hire me, like for, for whatever reason. I don't know why my generalist arts degree just did not grant me the career I hoped it would. Shock and surprise. And funnily enough, when I was in high school, I had a huge intent to become a designer. I applied for a bunch of art schools, and then ultimately 17-year-old me was like, what am I going to do with the design degree? That's useless. I'm not going to pursue that. So when I ended up moving to Toronto, I took a job as a receptionist in a creative recruiting firm. And, in this firm, they were staffing for marketing and software engineers and UX design and sort of any kind of shorter or longer term creative type contract. And I just became immediately interested in space. I took a part-time class at a school called Brain Station in the spring of 2016. And it was that moment where, I'm sure a lot of people have had that here, depending on their career, that moment of like, oh, I like this and I'm good at it. Like, this is a really amazing moment. So that summer, Brain Station offered their first ever full-time UX program. And I was just immediately immersed in the world of design. I ended up working at Brain Station as an educator for 3 more cohorts after mine. And then I got my first proper design job at a company called Inkblot. And I'm still at Inkblot over 4.5 years later. We've gone from a team of 7 when I joined, and now we're up to, I think, around 80. And the picture here on the bottom right-hand corner is a photo of my boss and I during Mental Health Awareness Week. So Inkblot is a digital mental health company. We specialize in providing a full range of benefits to different organizations, and we also offer online video therapy to individuals. So Inkblot has sort of been like my home in a sense for the past sort of while. And I went through a very dramatic life incident at the end of 2019. So I had previously been engaged. I had an apartment. I had a dog. I had all the little, the checkbox things that you do in your late 20s. And it all fell apart. And I was a mess. And I had been living, pretty much permanently in Toronto at that point for about 4 years. And I sort of said to myself, like, no, I'm going to stick it through. Right? Like, I'd always wanted to nomad. I always wanted to travel. And I was like, no. That's not being an adult. Like, I need to be a serious adult and have a serious job and take my life more seriously. And interestingly enough, I had a drink one night after this breakup with one of my friends. And he said to me, he's like, well, what are you doing? Why are you still in Toronto? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, your thing has been, you really want to go back to Asia, right? So like, why would you not just do that? This is your perfect opportunity. And it was sort of this amazing aha moment. And I got the permission from work to go and do like a working holiday in Bali for 6 weeks. And around the midway point of that trip, we had like an annual review. And I remember taking a call with my bosses at, I think it was like 2 a.m. I like set an alarm. I woke up for this like annual review because I was in Asia and this is Toronto time. And they were like, so Jackie, like, what do you want from 2020? Like, what is your goal for 2020? Right. And I was like, I just want to live in Bali. Like, I was like, can I do that, please? I don't want to leave the company. So I obviously, I came back to Toronto and they had time to think about it. But ultimately, I got approved to go full-time remote in February 2020. So I think we all know what happens next in this story. I so I packed up my life in Toronto and I sent all my stuff to my mom's house in Vancouver, and I had a going away party with work and I had a going away party with my friends. And we were all just so starry and dewy eyed in February of 2020. And then I left Toronto officially. I remember this so vividly. The day before my flight, my last day of work, I remember my last commute home on the subway in the snow. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. And then I like took my flight to Vancouver and I am just giddy and I'm about to go pick up my business visa. And I land in Vancouver and my mom's like, Jackie, I was like, what's up? And she's like, it just got declared a global pandemic. So literally the day I arrived in Vancouver, my mom's like, it's a global pandemic. And we're listening to the news on the way home. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, okay. I'll just bump my flight forward a week. I'll just leave earlier. I'll just leave on Tuesday. So I landed on a Thursday and I was like, okay, in these 3 days, I'm going to get my business visa, order my contact lenses, pack my bags, say goodbye to all my friends in Vancouver before I move to Asia. Like I was probably a little delusional at that point around what my options were. And so I go to pick up my business visa at the Indonesian consulate and the lady says to me, don't go, please don't go. It's not a good idea. She was like, just wait a month. It'll all be over by then. So of course I pushed my flight a month. And I pushed it another month. Then I pushed it another month and then my visa expired. And then at that point I just said, look, I'm just gonna stay in Vancouver. It's fine. So I stayed in Vancouver for another like 9 months total in the pandemic. And then it got to the point where it was coming up on the second winter of COVID. And I just had a strong feeling that things were going to get worse as the winter arrived. And I had been dreaming of this life for, I'd left that Kentucky job like 8 years prior. And I just really, really wanted to get back out there. So I heard that Mexico was kind of open and they were accepting tourists at that time. So finally in October of 2020, I began my remote journey and I haven't looked back since. I literally have not been back to Vancouver since I left in October 2020. And in fact, I've only been to Canada for a total of 2 weeks, which was in September of this year to see my colleagues and my friends in Toronto. And it's been an absolute whirlwind. I've been to over 10 countries. This is just a couple highlights. On the left here is the Grand Canyon. Above that, that's in Whistler in Canada, near Vancouver. Below this is in Colombia in the Cocora Valley. On the top right, that's in Costa Rica, some surfing last year. And then below that is a hostel in Colombia called Casa del Agua. It's literally like house in the water. And it's a hostel I had dreamed of staying at for almost 6 years. So kind of having all these opportunities be able to be a part of my life now that I live abroad has been really amazing. So that's sort of my story in a nutshell. And my current home right now, as I mentioned before, is in Medellin, Colombia. And I'll be here for approximately another 6 weeks, maybe more. I don't know. I actually haven't decided what I'm doing after the 23rd of March. So that's my story. So I figure now we can sort of jump into talking about what are some types of remote work, because not all remote work is the same. And there are a lot of different options if this is something that you're interested in. So to start off, I would say this is a really great, like very easy sort of thing to do, which is a work retreat, an industry or like a Nomad meetup. And these can go anywhere from a few days up until about, a week on average. Sometimes your company might put on something like this, or maybe it's an external organization. These are sort of like, imagine it's like going to a conference, but it's like a conference on vacation. So it's really cool because you get to learn something new. Maybe you could meet like other designers or other people in your industry in different cities and countries. So I just showed 2 examples here. On the top, this is UX Experience in Lisbon. This is a big conference that's happening in May. It's 4 days of UX training in Lisbon. And these types of conferences exist like they're in multiple places all the time. And I believe there's a bunch of different conference directories you can kind of check out. And then below this is Nomad Cruise. RIP Nomad Cruise. I don't know if it's ever going to happen again because of nobody wants to go on a cruise right now. But Nomad Cruise also has a periphery company called Nomad Base. They just had a meetup in Lisbon and in Mexico, and they're doing another one in Croatia in the spring as well. So this could be a great opportunity if you're interested in learning more about more long-term travel. A lot of nomadic people like to attend these conferences, and they might even sort of plan their year around a great opportunity to meet other people in their industry or other remote workers as well. So I would say the next level up is a working holiday. And this picture on the right is a recent working holiday I did with some friends in Costa Rica when we were kind of planning out this sort of seminar for everybody. A working holiday, I would say, is like 1 to 4 weeks, with the idea that you go and you do some remote work, but you're not making a super big commitment. Like you're not going to give up your lease or, sell your house or, get rid of all your belongings. You're more like, oh, I'm going on a vacation, but I'm going to go on an extra long vacation because from Monday to Friday or whatever your working days are, you're going to do your job. And I think these are really great too, because it takes away the stress of like saving and taking a bunch of time off work. It's like, oh, like you're just gonna like keep working, which I think is really nice. It's also good because you don't really have to pack a lot. Like if you're just taking a short trip, you really just need your computer and your essentials. You don't have to have your like Nomad backpack with like your laptop stand and your extra keyboard and your iPad and your second laptop and your 6 chargers. And I think this is a great way to sort of go without the commitment. Again, another great way to introduce yourself to nomading. But working holidays, I find, are really fun to do with either colleagues or friends from home, right? Because you're going for a short amount of time, there's a lot less pressure to need to meet a lot of people. And then the next level up is part-time nomading. I would say about half the people I've met traveling use this option, especially those that live in cold climates and want to escape said cold climates for roughly 3 months of the year. And I also know it's becoming a lot more common for organizations now to offer like 3 months abroad to their employees. So this to me is a really, really excellent option going forward as we are hopefully becoming post-pandemic, and a lot more organizations are seeing the value in providing their teams with this type of level of flexibility. I would say part-time nomading is anything from a few months up to a year, but generally part-time nomading, the idea is that you have an end date. Like you're going to book a flight home, like you're going to go back, and you probably have some kind of a home base. Whether that's, an apartment that you're maybe subleasing at home, or you're taking some time off to maybe go live with family for a bit, and then you're gonna, travel, and you have a very kind people that will let you leave your things at their house. And to me, this is really a best of both worlds option. And you can kind of have a feeling of home in multiple places. I'm meeting a number of people this time around in Medellin that have been to Medellin multiple times, and they come here every winter. So it's like, this is kind of like their second home. Like maybe they live in New York, or they live in Europe, or, maybe they live like really close. Like maybe they just live in California, but they just like the change of pace and they want to practice their Spanish. I think this is a great option for that. And then finally, this is the no joke full commitment option that I chose, which is full-time nomading. And really what it is it's complete location independence. You have no defined home. You don't have a home base. I would say full-time nomading is really anywhere from a year to an unspecified amount of time. And I will say a lot of people that initially choose part-time, they just fall into full-time. It's like you extend and you extend and you extend, and then before you know it, you haven't been home in 5 years. And this is a story I've heard multiple times while I've been traveling. So to kind of explain the photo I've chosen on the right here, this is the apartment that I was fortunate enough to live in New York this year. So I ended up falling in love with Brooklyn and spent almost 6 months there this year, and ended up getting myself like a bit of a bigger place. I have my very nice IKEA futon here, Amazon rug, and just a couple of things I bought to make me feel a little bit more at home. And I would describe anywhere where you stay for like 3+ months, that's more like slow madding. So there's nomads and there's slow mads. So nomading, I would say, is more like you stay somewhere for a month, maybe less, maybe 2 months. And then I know people that are slow mads that might even stay in one location for 6 months, and then they'll move on to the next place. And I think that aspect of nomading is really important. At least I've learned that bopping around all the time really can take a toll on you as a human being, especially with having to say goodbye to people all the time, adjusting to a new work schedule constantly. So it's definitely a big commitment. But if anybody that's here today is interested in full-time nomading, I'm happy to kind of chat with you more after the session as well. I'd also say if you want to do this, just get used to not having a base and just leaving your stuff random places and just having very few belongings. I literally travel with one medium-sized suitcase and one carry-on suitcase, and that's it. That's all my stuff. Okay, do's and don'ts around working and traveling. Let's kick off with working hours, because I think this is a really important one. So do connect with your team to make sure that you're aligned and available at the same times. This is really important, especially when you're working across different time zones, or if your team you're on is already distributed. Do keep a schedule the same way you would at home. It's really easy to get caught up in the madness when you're abroad, but if you don't keep a schedule, your work life will suffer. Take it from me. Don't let your work life suffer, because it will affect your mental health. So keep a schedule. Do request flexible hours if that's an option for you. Some of us are fortunate enough to have roles where maybe we don't have as many meetings, and we can kind of work a little bit more siloed on different projects. So if that's an option for you, I would always recommend talking about that with your manager on, okay, like I'm going to be, say I'm from London and I'm going to go work in New York, and I don't want to start working at 5 o'clock in the morning. Is it okay if I start a couple hours later in the day, and then I'm going to extend my day a bit, and I'm going to work on my personal projects when all of you have logged off at 5 or 6? And really just make sure you build a schedule that works for you. You're going to be surrounded by people that are working very odd hours or very normal hours, but really it's about finding what works with the cadence of your job and your lifestyle. I say don't overcommit yourself in difficult hours. For example, you're living in Asia and you work North American hours. You may think you're going to be absolutely fine to sit in meetings from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. every day, but that might not be the case. So I always recommend sort of testing things out when you get there. And don't forget to, some typos, apologies. Don't forget to give yourself some adjustment time. I don't recommend booking a meeting, for example, the morning after a travel day. Things can go wrong. For example, even for me coming back to Colombia this time, I was in Costa Rica, and customs lineup in Bogota was crazy. I missed my connecting flight and I didn't get to my apartment until like 1 o'clock in the morning. So I ended up starting that work day at noon. And I just communicated that with my manager. Internet, key question. Do always conduct a speed test at a new location. Speed test is a nomad's best friend. And in a don't assume the internet will be fast. It probably won't be. If you're used to living in a major city where the internet is lightning fast and you still occasionally have issues, you're going to constantly have issues when you're abroad. And it's just something that you're going to have to adapt to. You're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to communicate with your team, and you're going to want to really like select locations that have good internet. So I would say do connect with other nomads and travelers via forums to find out better locations or where dead zones are. For example, there's a place in Mexico that people love called Puerto Escondido. I can't go there because the internet cuts out all the time, and I have way too many meetings for me to be in a place where the internet cuts out all the time, which doesn't make sense. Do message hotels, hostels, and hosts to ask for a speed test or info on the internet, but have a backup because it might not be true. They might send you an incorrect speed test, or it might just go down when you get there. And I'm going to add as well, don't pick remote locations if you have a job that requires fast and consistent connection. you may just need to live in cities, and that's fine. And that's the case for a lot of nomads. What they'll do is they'll live in a city and then they'll do like a weekend trip to the beach, for example, so that they can not have to worry about it impacting work. Workspace and setup. Do pack what you require for your desk, depending on the length of the trip. Like I mentioned before, if you're just doing a working holiday, you probably don't need all your things. But if you're living abroad, you do. I mean, I pack with me an extension cord with like 7 outlets in it, 2 laptops, laptop stand, trackpad, keyboard, iPad, like pens, note paper, like everything I need. Because when I didn't have that stuff last year, my back hurt all the time. So don't forget about your physical health. Ergonomics are really important, especially when you're changing locations all the time. And like, think about the fact too, it's like, it's not just your desk setup. It's like you're sleeping in a new bed every night, and you're on planes all the time, and you're in bumpy buses, and on, you're walking up and down steep hills, and like, it's really hard on your body to put it through such like change all the time. So, so just make sure that like you're setting yourself up for success. I also would say, definitely invest in noise canceling headphones. I think that they are like hugely valuable. Where's my pair? They're not on hand. I must have put them somewhere else, but try to find some that also cancel like the outside noise for your microphone. Sometimes I've been in really loud cafes and I'm still able to, conduct meetings and have calls because my headphones are really good quality. And also try to, pick working spaces that are going to meet your needs, right? Like, some co-working spaces are super social and just kind of fun and not a good place to take calls. Some are like dead quiet. And like, if you have a conversation with the person sitting next to you, they will like get mad at you and maybe ask you to leave. So you have to kind of figure out what works best for you. Schedule, do create a routine, as I mentioned before, super important in long-term travel. So if you're the kind of person that needs exercise to function, find a gym, like find an exercise class, get up in the morning and do it in the same way you would have done it at home. Do make time to enjoy where you are. So for example, this summer I worked in Europe. I worked Toronto hours. So I was in Italy, and I would wake up in the morning and like walk the streets of Rome and see things and have an amazing lunch, and then just come back and kick off my day at 2 p.m. Right. So you have to figure out sort of what works for your schedule, but don't forget to enjoy where you are, because you're traveling, you're somewhere new. And do enjoy your weekends and days off. I think that especially in the long-term nomad culture, a lot of people that nomad are entrepreneurs, have side hustles, have multiple jobs, and a lot of people work 7 days a week. And that's really, really great. And it's nice to be in an atmosphere of people that are so passionate about what they do, but it can also really create environments of overworking. And I think the whole point of doing something like this is to potentially try something new and get some enjoyment out of your life. Don't commit to meetings at odd hours until you've settled in. Super important. Make sure you are adjusted, and don't overcommit to activities. Don't be me last year. I was just tired all the time. Like, I made it work, but I would say like, I love salsa dancing. And sometimes I would go out dancing like 5 or 6 days a week, and dancing would end at midnight. And then I'd be waking up at, 7:30 to start work. And it was a little bit overwhelming and kind of exhausting. And then socializing and meeting people. If you are traveling alone, definitely pick hubs. It will make your life so much easier to meet people. And you're going to meet more people than you realize. A couple hubs are places like Medellin, Lisbon, Bali, and Cape Town. Of course, there's a lot of other places, but I would say these 4 are like really, really known to be popular spots for nomads to spend time in. If you're going to stay in a hostel, which I also like doing when I travel, I recommend picking ones that have co-working spaces, because if you just pick a regular hostel, you're just going to be around people that are like backpacking, and then they're going to be like, hey, do you want to go hike this waterfall at 11 a.m. tomorrow? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So trying to pick locations where you're going to meet people that are in your situation is great. So I find like communal tables at co-working spaces, I've actually made a lot of friends, literally just like sitting at the same table 5 days in a row. And all of a sudden, by the 5th day, we're like, oh, it's Friday. Like, do you want to grab dinner after work or something like that? Don't only befriend people that are on holiday. And sorry, I mentioned that one before. I can skip that one. And then don't forget to take breaks. This is something that I learned the hard way. I'm an extremely extroverted individual. And even for me, the constant onslaught of socializations and social plans, and it's like, I'm sure we all remember when we were maybe in university or, and it's like fresher week and where are you from? Like, what are you studying? Like, and you like have that like rehearsed story that you tell over and over again. It's going to be the same thing nomading and working and traveling. And it's fine until it's not. So make sure that you take breaks. Personally, now I choose to live alone because I just like need space from being around people all the time. And then finally, just some nitty gritty stuff, insurance, visas, taxes, and healthcare. Really can't forget these aspects. Do look up the tax laws, not only for your country of residence, but the countries you're traveling to. In general, if you don't stay anywhere longer than 3 or in some countries 6 months, this will never be an issue for you. But if you did want to spend some like time somewhere longer than that, it's a very high likelihood that you need to claim residency in that country. And then depending on where you're from, you might need to pay double taxes. So you might need to pay tax to your home country and the new country you're living in. So I highly recommend conducting research, especially for longer term trips. Do consult with your employer. I do not recommend lying. I meet a lot of people traveling that lie, and I feel the pain. Like they are consistently extremely stressed out. They're always hiding in corners to make sure that their backgrounds don't look too tropical or warm. They'll like wear sweaters when it's like 35 degrees. So the people don't realize where they are. So I don't recommend lying. And if this lifestyle is something you want, then maybe consider trying to take a role that's a bit more remote. The reason why I'm saying this as well is that you can really hurt your employer if you lie, because depending on where you're living and how long you're there for, they may also need to pay taxes on behalf of you conducting business in that country. So I would always just check on that stuff. And do look into long-term residency options and long-term visas. For example, I know the Bahamas has a Nomad visa. I believe Spain is introducing one in the coming year. Estonia is a great option for people that want to live in Europe and have some kind of a financial and tax base. Don't forget to purchase insurance. This is really important. Safety Wings is a big one for nomads because they offer multi-country policies that are like can be extended, but it's cheaper if you're doing a working holiday to get insurance that's based out of your country as like a travel insurance. So there is a difference between nomad insurance and travel insurance. Just make sure you look into that. Don't assume the quality of healthcare is going to be bad. Also, don't assume it's going to be good. Every country has really different processes, and many have both private and public options. For example, I've had to get care here in Colombia, and the MRI, the CT scan I'm getting is $60. When I was living in New York, that would have cost me a few $100s, right? So like you really just have to understand the place you're going and what the access to care will be. I always recommend looking that up before you go. You don't want to be in a position where you're sick and you don't know what to do. And then finally, don't forget to check visa and entry requirements very far in advance. We are still in the pandemic and there are far more rules than there ever have been. They are definitely workable. It's not the end of the world. You just have to fill out more forms. You have to be more prepared. You have to download apps. You have to be prepared to spend more time at the airport. It's very doable, but like, don't be that person that is then super reliant on other people and has no idea what they're doing. Make sure like you conduct that research. And just a couple of resources, I'll quickly blow through these. Some remote travel companies. This is sort of like if you want to not have to worry about it yourself. Like literally you just join a chapter, they get your accommodation sorted for you, they get the Wi-Fi set up, you have a built-in friendship group. These are all great options. I've personally only traveled with Wi-Fi Tribe, but I've met people that have used all of these companies and they've all had really great experiences. Co-living and accommodation options. There are a zillion co-living spaces. There's a website called coliving.com. You can check out for more like individual ones in different cities, but these are some really big ones. Outside, Selena is massive, especially in Latin America. Of course, Airbnb and Hostel World are really great for finding a comm. And Outpost is one that's growing quite quickly with a lot of locations in the US. And then just logistics, Safety Wing, as I said, is a great Nomad insurance. Nomad List is a great way to check if a country is highly rated for remote work. So it's just a website that has a repository of a bunch of different cities. They also have a Slack forum as well, so you can try to connect with people in different places. One Way Fly, this is a game changer. If you're a long-term nomad, you can book a flight that will get you will get canceled on. So sometimes it's an entry requirement in a country to have a return flight out. But if you're like me and you don't know what you want to do, you just use something like One Way Fly where it says you're going to leave at a certain date, but you can just figure that out later on. And Google, I spend a lot of time on Google. It's just an amazing resource for finding answers. It's like with everything, especially design, just figure it out yourself, just Google it and you'll get the answer you need. And yeah, that's it from me. I guess we can open it to questions now, but if anybody would like to connect, that's my Instagram, Jacquie.io, or you can feel free, please, to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm sure we can also post these socials in the Fearless Slack as well. But I guess at this point, I'll just sort of open it up.
Amazing. Jacquie, thank you so much. That was both beautiful to hear about your journey, but also the real, like you say, there is nitty gritty that goes with this lifestyle, right? You can't just pack a bag and pick a flight. There's so many other things that you need to think about. And it is very different to just backpacking and traveling socially just to, you know, take that gap year and do it. So thank you so much for that in depth. That was wonderful. What I'll do, if anybody has got any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I'll quickly go through the questions that we've had throughout the presentation, but if you pop them in there, and then like Jacquie says, we can move over onto the Slack as well. So if you've got other questions that you want to ask, obviously she can answer them in there as well. So you kind of answered the one about taxes. Benedict says, do you have any issues with taxes or other state obligations while you have been staying abroad or a whole year or the majority of a year?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends where you're from. For example, for me in Canada, I'm something called a residual resident of Canada. What it means is I pay my taxes to British Columbia, where I technically hold residency my mom's house in Vancouver. So I just pay my taxes to BC every year and it's fine. As long as I don't declare residency anywhere else, I can continue to be a residual resident essentially infinitely. I mean, there's not like a ton of information online about if you do it for more than 5 years, but the example they even give on the website is like, for example, you get offered a job in Hong Kong and you're going to be in Hong Kong you're going to be in Hong Kong for, 9 months of the year, but, you're traveling back and forth and you're never going to become a resident of Hong Kong because it's a whole process to be a resident there. So you're just working there a lot. You just keep paying taxes in Canada. So that's the situation that I'm currently in. But again, that's Canada. So every country is going to have different rules. I know in the US especially, it's a lot more strict and you may need to apply for something called foreign earned income exemption to just declare that you're only going to be in US X number of days to not pay tax. I don't know. The tax stuff is complicated and it's very individualized.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So yeah, individual research based on your home country is the key there, really the most important thing. Perrine says, how do you do a working holiday, or do you mean that you're attached to a company and you can ask if you can do one?
Yeah, I mean, that's really up to your work, right? So it depends if you are a company that is like more of a remote team. For example, at Inkblot, everybody's remote. We're hybrid. We have an office in Toronto, but obviously as well with the pandemic, there was a hiring strategy to hire people across Canada. So it's really the same as anything. It's like, okay, say I don't know, I want to go to Mexico and I live in Toronto. And I'm going to ask work, hey, is it okay if I do this extended trip to Mexico over the course of my 3-week trip, I'm going to take 3 long weekends. So I'm going to work 3 4-day weeks while I'm in Mexico. Is that okay? So I would be gone for a total of 3 weeks. And then in total, I'm going to take maybe 4 days off work, 1 travel day and the 3 long weekends, right? So it's just about like, just broach the idea, right? Like I think everybody will know their own company's policies for this, right? Like it really depends where you work, right? Classic like designer answer, it depends. But it really does, right? I mean, for us, we have like an unlimited vacation policy. So remote work is it's just pretty common. A lot of people too, at our company, for example, maybe they have like a cottage or a cabin, and then in the summer, they want to go work by the lake. To me, that's also like a working holiday, right? Like even if you're close to home, it's a working holiday. You're not in your like usual home base. So again, you could always maybe start with something more simple like that. Or maybe you go to like the countryside for a week just to get a break from the city, but you don't feel like you need to fully take the time off. I think you could maybe start with something like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think something you said as well in the presentation is just it's communication. Just have these conversations with your employer, find a way to make it work amongst yourself, because like you say, it does depend. Every company is so individual, every employee and employer will be so individual. But if you have that open dialogue and you ask all the right questions, then something that, you know, like you say, worst that happens is they say no. If not, you might be able to work something out and kind of start this journey or get those little working holidays here and there. So I definitely think communication is key in making sure that this sort of lifestyle would work. Hoy would just, I love this. She really wants to experience it. What is something I can do right now to push myself towards starting this journey?
That's a really, really great question. I'm going to give a couple different thoughts on this. So I think that courage as a life skill is like an achievable thing. I don't think people are inherently born more or less courageous. Like I think it's something that you can cultivate. And I have found, at least for me, in this experience, now that I've been doing it for longer, I will say when you do get to make that first step, it gets way easier. Like that first step is definitely the hardest. So I don't want anybody here to feel like that's not difficult. Like I'm not going to sit here and say, it's so easy, just book a flight. It's like, no, it's not so easy, right? Like, I mean, we have commitments, we have comfort, we have things in our lives that we're maybe not ready to like fully let go of yet. So my recommendation is always peer support. I think peer support is really powerful. So for me, when I was living with my mom again during the pandemic, like the early pandemic, like April, May 2020, I just knew that I was going to fall into a pattern of setting up a life in Vancouver. Like I felt it. Like I felt like it was going to happen. So that is when I joined Wi-Fi Tribe, which is a like remote workers community. And they were at that time offering these like online chapters. So they would call their trips like a month in Mexico City, like a month in Lisbon, like a chapter. So they offered these 2-week online chapters, which was like digital co-working and I don't know, coffee chats and just talking about travel. And for me, being in a community of people that intended to be nomadic was so helpful because it made me feel way less alone in wanting these things. Like I have found with some of my friends that like just live somewhere, like live in a location, they often say to me, I don't know how you could do this. I don't know how you could do this. And that can be really discouraging if you're looking to like do it for the first time, right? But when you meet people that say to you, you can do this, I believe in you, I'm here to support you, let me connect you with this person. Oh, when you go to this city, you should stay in this co-living space. Why don't you do something like Hackers Paradise or Wi-Fi Tribe where everything is organized for you? So I think the best way to get that initial push is to build a support network, right? I think it makes everything feel like a lot less scary. And then you can really build more confidence to make that first step. I hope that
That's
answers the
awesome.
question.
I love that. And I love cultivate courage. That's being turned into a motivational quote, Jackie. I absolutely love that. I think that's so true. I've never thought of it like that before, but that's wonderful. We've got a real practical question from Sarah. Have you ever had issues with the security on your work laptop that has restricted you access because of where you are?
I haven't personally yet. So just based on the nature of my role, that hasn't been an issue, but certainly for other roles and depending on the company you work for, you will have to use a VPN. Many nomads I meet, many use VPNs. I also have like a work laptop. So like I work on my work laptop and I do personal on my personal laptop. Like it's very straightforward for me in that sense. So it's really, again, your company. And that's why I say, like, be honest. Like, you don't want to put yourself in a position where something happens to your computer and you've been lying about where you are. And now you're in a position where like you could get terminated, right? Like, don't take that risk. Just be honest, because they probably have software that they can put on your computer for you that will be beneficial. And you also don't want to be in a position where what if your laptop gets stolen? And they're like, how did your laptop get stolen? Right. So like you need to, just be prepared for those conversations with your employers. And again, that is probably the most courage you will need in the whole process is asking. The asking to go part sometimes is the hardest. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we'll take one more question. And then if it's all right with you, Jackie, we'll just jump over to the Slack. So we've kind of got that like script that people can like catch up back with as well, which will be great. So Bobby asks, how do you mentally switch to working afternoon and evening hours? I really struggle working past 4 p.m, but I would love to do a remote holiday in Asia.
Oh gosh, it's hard. You just do it. You just do it. I mean, the benefit too, again, peer support, right? Like you're not alone. When you are in some of these places, you're going to meet a number of other people that could be in the same scenario as you. So you'll find the co-working space that I used to go to in Bali, it was 24 hours and it was packed at night, packed. Like everybody was in it together. It's solidarity. And then you just become nocturnal and that's just your life. Like a lot of people I know that did that. For example, they did Asia and like North American hours to Asia is like crazy. It's like the middle of the night. So they would start work at like 8 or 9 p.m. and then they would work until like 1 or so. If they had meetings, they would try to have them like as early as possible. And then they would nap and then they would like wake up and surf and then they would like nap. And then they would wake up and do a couple hours of work and then they would go to the gym and then they would eat and then they would start the work day. Like, I don't know, you do it. I mean, it's hard and you know your body best. I didn't love the night work in Europe, but I adapted. I don't know, I figured it out. And now that I'm, back in North American hours in Colombia, I'm like a massive early bird for whatever reason. When I live in a warmer climate, I just love to wake up early and just begin my day at like 7. So you will do it. If you really want to do it, you will do it. And that's why I also suggest, like, I would say just go for like a month because maybe it doesn't work for you and that's okay. But like you tried, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm going to move to Indonesia when you've never kind of worked those hours before. Yeah. I also feel like, Laura, I could really quickly answer the one around if the client's in another country, do you need to pay tax in the client's country? Yeah, you do, depending if you're a full-time freelancer. The good thing is there's a lot of education on this available online. And if you join Nomad communities, they literally run seminars on these kinds of things. So again, it super depends on the country that you're from. Like some places it's great and not an issue, and some it's really hard. That's why a lot of nomads that are full-time freelancers, they end up, say they open their business in like Panama, or they open their business in Jersey, or they open their business in Estonia, because then they don't have to deal with that. So if this is something that you want to do full time, I would like highly recommend you look into becoming a resident of a place that is like a bit more of a tax haven for this, like for the shared purpose of like your sanity in all of this. Yeah.
Yeah, it can definitely get quite complex with all of the different
Yes.
countries' rules, because it isn't a global thing, is it? Every country has their own specific. So yeah, I can imagine it could get quite messy. Jacquie, I just want to say a huge thank you for your time today and for that talk. It was absolutely brilliant. I love that we've even got people that are kind of asking for that nice little push just to get them started. So I hope that you've all found it really useful as well. So many different options to look at. As Jacquie said, she's really happy for you guys to connect with her and reach out to her. I would just ask selfishly that if you've got questions for Jacquie, can we put them in the public Slack rather than DM her, just again, because it will help out everybody else who is on the call as well. And I'm sure she'd be more than happy to continue talking on the topic. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining, especially at all the various different time zones you're in. Sarah, go and get some sleep. Anyone else that's on that kind of cusp, go and get some sleep as well. But yes, please do let us know if you've got any questions, pop them in the Slack. And if you haven't already, check out the Fearless Eventbrite, ready for our next event coming next week, which is with the lovely Amy, all about Notion and how it can be useful for designers. But until then, Jacquie, thank you so much. And we'll see you all in the Slack.